My name is Ron Jones, and for years I kept a strange secret. I shared this silence with 200 students until I ran into one of them. Steve Caniglio had been a sophomore student in my world history class. Mr. Jones! Mr. Jones! I had to stop for a minute to remember. Steve sensed my questioning and backed up, then smiled and slowly raised a hand in cupped position. My God, he's a member of the third wave. We just stood there when, without a conscious command, I raised my hand in a curved position. The salute was given. Two comrades had met long after the war. The third wave was still alive. Mr. Jones, do you remember the third wave? I sure do. It was one of the most frightening events I ever experienced. It was also the genesis of a secret that I and 200 students would sadly share for the rest of our lives.
That was an incredible documentary. I was chilling, emotional, factual. Thank you, Emanuel Rotstein, for making this and expanding our vision of what happened with Ron Jones's experiment. You know, we've done a lot at the Marsh with the wave at this point. We did a musical and wow. So we are now going to have, I'm going to moderate a Q&A. So thankful everyone is here. Emanuel is here. Welcome, Emanuel. And
Good
Ron
morning.
Jones. Well, I hate to tell you, but it's not morning for us.
I know.
You are in Germany, right? So it's 9 hours later, correct?
Emanuel, hi.
Ian wants to say hello.
Anna.
Hi, how are the boys?
Very good.
Good.
I hope they're still sleeping.
Yeah, good morning to you. Thank you for
Good
doing
morning.
this.
Absolutely.
Hi, and Ron Jones is here. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you.
What a thing you've done, and it keeps going and going and going and going. It's incredible. I think I wanted to start first with Emanuel. Tell me a little bit about yourself. What led you to this?
Yes. First of all, thank you very much for having me. It's a big honor. It's a big pleasure, even though it's very early in Germany. Nonetheless, it's great being with you, even if we are so far and just virtually divided. It feels very close, especially to Ron, whom I've been working with for 2 years already on this documentary. A little bit more about myself. My name is Emanuel Rotstein. I'm a filmmaker and producer based in Munich in Germany. And I've been working on documentaries for the last 15 years. Basically, historical topics, contemporary history, and most of all stories which haven't been told, or stories that, from my perspective, needed a new point of view, and making stories relevant to a modern audience. So this is basically my goal. Tell stories that need to be told.
Tell us a couple of documentaries you've made before this.
Oh yeah, good question.
Yes, I'm working for the History Channel in Germany, and I have the honor to produce for us in-house, and we definitely made a couple of documentaries which made some kind of a splash, even were broadcast in the US. Probably the first one I would like to mention is The 11th Day, The Survivors of Munich 1972, a documentary about the survivors of the terror attack of the Munich Olympics almost 50 years ago. We were the first ones to tell the stories of the survivors, the people the Israeli team members who weren't killed by the Palestinian terrorists. A further documentary told the story of the liberation of the concentration camp Dachau, from two perspectives: the perspectives of the liberators, the American GIs, who came from the US to liberate Europe, and the perspective of the the Jewish prisoners who were liberated. And after 70 years, we brought them together for the first time.
Wow. So when you say the History Channel, this is the History Channel we watch, or is it?
Exactly. Yeah, it's the German-speaking History Channel in German-speaking territory. It's Austria, it's Switzerland, and it's Germany. But more or less, it's the same company. Yes.
And this was in English. So do you normally have it in English, or do you normally have it in German?
I try to produce my films in English to make them available for an international audience, and then dub them into Germany.
Okay.
Dub them into German, of course.
So before we go to Ron, tell me, why did you want to do this documentary? How did you come to know about it? How did this all happen?
Yeah, how did this all happen? Well, unfortunately, the topic is timely. The story of the third wave, the story of upcoming nationalism, of the resurgence of fascism, resurgence of anti-Semitism, is something I'm concerned with for a while already. And I've been working on a documentary about the appeal of totalitarian leaders. And for this film, I reached out to Ron, and we had a chat about the wave. But I realized, from my perspective, I needed and wanted to explore the topic further, and I wanted to meet more students. I wanted to speak to more people who were involved with the wave class. And it felt like, from my perspective, I want to tell the story for my channel, for the History Channel in Germany.
How did you even find out about it?
Well, it's compulsory reading in Germany. The wave, you saw it at the end, the end credits. I mentioned the book The Wave by Morton Rue, Todd Strasser in the US. It's mandatory reading, so every school child in Germany has to read the book The Wave, and it's part of the school curriculum. So you know about the story, that at least the novelization. But you don't know a lot about the real story behind it. And for me, as a grandchild of survivors of the Holocaust, one question was always puzzling me: the question of why. Why did that happen? How could that happen? And with exploring this topic, for me, it made a huge contribution of, in a way, finding an answer.
So how old were you when you read The Wave?
I guess I was 16 or 17.
And it stuck with you?
It stuck with me, definitely.
Stuck with you. Amazing, Ron, huh? So just to mention that we will have this, we have a limited time. Anyone who wants to see this again or to tell their friends, it will be on MarshStream until tomorrow night, Sunday at midnight. So if you want to tell anybody about it, you will be able to see it by going to themarsh.org and going to Performer Spotlight and clicking on it to get to the documentary. So Ron, what is it like for you to see this?
I sat here tonight. To be honest, this is the first time, Emanuel, Deanna and I actually saw the complete film. We snuck a look at Deanna's parts early, but it's still very emotional to both of us.
So this is the first time you're watching it.
Yeah.
What do you want to say something to Emanuel about that?
Yeah, thank you, Emanuel. I think you captured the essence of the story, and you honored the students particularly, and that's a blessing. So,
how does it feel? How does it feel, Emanuel, to see this with Ron? That must be quite an experience for you.
Absolutely, and well, it's more of a blessing, and I thank him very much for his trust, and I thank all of the other students in Diana for their trust, because you never know what comes out of it. If someone from Germany rings at your door and says, "Hey, I want to make a documentary about the wave," and and I know Ron was very hesitant for a very long time to talk about the story, and I'm very, very, very thankful. And there's someone else I would like to mention again. That's Mark Hancock. You have seen him in the film. He was also instrumental in making this film, because he was helping with finding and especially convincing the other students to be part of that. And also a big element of trust, and I'm very thankful for that.
You know, one thing that happens as a teacher, you get to meet your students through their whole life. So many of them have gone on to be artists, parents. And in Mark's case, he's studying a doctorate about the Holocaust. So it's become a bigger part of his life, and he's sharing that with people that he meets. So I feel wonderful about being a teacher and having that experience with those particular students.
So Emanuel, yeah. And who you have this whole relationship with these students, with some of them at least, it's been a lifetime, and a lifetime now that allows someone like Emanuel to come do this incredible documentary, because you've kept this community has kept alive. And I don't know how much it's been through you or students like Mark Hancock. How did this happen, Ron? Like how did this community keep itself alive?
Well, I think Mark is instrumental because he created a website, thewavehome.com, and that allowed students to connect up, to say hello to each other, to see each other's history, to explore what happened, why it happened, to be together. You know, you do the same thing, Stephanie. You create a community. The Wave has a community. It's a strange community, I must tell you. Many of the students are different cultures, and they were very, very active. That's another story. Some of them were members of Venceremos and were really game changers in the world, and still are.
And do you think it's partially because of what happened in that classroom?
No. Deanna and I will tell you, it's the students that taught us.
What I mean,
They would come to our house up in Ben Lomond and Boulder Creek, and Deanna would have cookies ready, and the women would say, "That's not the role of women." So Deanna and I were constantly, we were learning a lot about how to struggle for freedom and justice.
but still, by giving this experience, you may have, it's like that trigger, that trigger to look at that part of yourself that then, got enlarged through the rest of their life. Not to say it wouldn't have happened, but it might have been something that helped to make these things
I
happen.
think we are embossed in their lives to some extent, because they experienced probably for the first time a teacher being fired, ideas being nullified, and questioning being removed, and that must have been somewhat informative for them in their lives. And in truth, for us, they saved us. Joe Pickering's watching tonight. He was a parent at the time, and the students and the parents, when I was being fired, took over the school gymnasium and held it for 2 or 3 days, 300 students refusing to move, until there was a public discussion of this one teacher called Mr. Jones. So I'm grateful. That saved my soul.
But you still got fired, right?
Yeah, well, that's a blessing in a way too. You never know where life's going to take you. I've unfortunately been fired many times.
But only one big experiment, I wonder.
Probably not, actually. Working at the Rec Center for the Handicapped for 35 years, every day was an experiment in how to bring people together, how to meet outsiders, how to meet people that are lonely, how to change the world. Through basketball, though, Emanuel.
Not through fascism. You had enough of the fascist part.
Yeah. Basketball was a great way to bring people together. We would have the mayor's office, Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. Everyone wanted to come and play us because of freedom, the joy of freedom.
Emanuel, tell us a little bit about your process. What happened? You came up with the idea, you contacted Ron, you contacted the history. How did it happen? Tell us.
Well, actually, it happened quite fast. I reached out to Ron, I reached out to Mark. I don't know the exact order who I've contacted first. Nonetheless, both of them were very supportive from the beginning and liked my idea. So my earlier project with them was about the appeal of fascism, appeal of totalitarian leaders. And both gentlemen liked my approach of filmmaking, and they liked probably how I conducted the interview, and we got along very well from the beginning. And as I said before, it's all a relationship of trust. And from then on, I was introduced to the other students. I was introduced to Phil Neal, who was also very instrumental to the film, who produced together with Mark Hancock a while ago the film The Lesson Plan, the students' perspective of the wave experiment. And without their support, without their help, I wouldn't be sitting here, and the film wouldn't have been made. So it's all a collaboration, I have to say. Filmmaking is all about collaboration and help and support and trust.
So you are the descendants of Holocaust survivors. How did they survive?
My grandparents on both sides, maternal and paternal, they were fleeing to Russia when Germany invaded Poland. They're all Polish Jews. The former Soviet Union opened their borders, and they were able to escape as refugees. And they were escaping as far as Siberia, so thousands and thousands of kilometers into the Russian wilderness. And they had survived by whatever work needed to be done. But they were just a small part of the families. All the other family members were either killed instantly when the Germans arrived, or were sent to the gas chambers.
And how did you end up in Germany?
That is a good question, which I'm asking myself constantly. And the funny thing is, my children, or my elder son, who's 11 now, he's asking himself the question as well. So it's something, a constant conversation with ourselves, why we are here in Germany. But my grandparents ended up in refugee camps, displaced persons camps, DP camps, after the war. They returned from Russia to start a new life. And when the American liberators came to Germany, they set up those refugee camps, and they were small, the first Jewish communities after the war. And my grandparents, after a couple they were trying to get to the United States, they were trying to get to Canada, they were in Israel for a while, they returned to Germany for whatever reason, and they stayed here. And we've got a saying, they were here with their packed suitcases. It was a saying of German Jews after the war. We were here with packed suitcases. And let's say after 5 or 6 or 7 decades, we started to unpack them. But the current situation in Europe, the current situation around the world, with the rise of nationalism, and also here anti-Semitism in Germany, people started thinking again if they should put their stuff back in the suitcases and have them at least in the den for security reasons.
So
Jan and I will always remember being in Munich at your synagogue and having that opportunity to be in that tunnel, in that experience, that profound impact on us. Thank you.
Thank you.
What was profound about it, Ron?
The numbers of people, the loss, the resilience to stay in the middle of Munich, to place your temple there, to have your it's a long lifelong struggle to be free.
Yeah, and Emanuel, you're finding a great increase in anti-Semitism in Germany?
Definitely, you find. I don't know if scholars are divided about this. If the numbers have increased, or people are more openly reporting anti-Semitic threats. But what I can, from my personal experience, people are much more open to utter their anti-Semitic rhetoric on the internet with their full names. I mean, this is something you see in the US as well, but people are not shying away from it anymore. And they say, more or less, time is over. We can say now whatever we want, and it's in the open. It's not mainstream, of course. You shouldn't be afraid, and the German society is stable. Nonetheless, you hear those voices more than you have heard them in the past.
Emanuel, I'd like to ask you what the response of the film has been in Europe and Germany, but more importantly, what are you seeing about the United States that alerts you, alarms you, or?
Especially in regard to the United States, as often I see the film, I see so many parallels to your current administration, and it seemed like you've been conducting your experiment right out of the authoritarian playbook, which means you have a us versus them, an in and out group. You have a clear-cut enemy. You were attacking the elite, as the children were saying. We were marching against Washington, and this is what Trump is saying. He's attacking the elite in Washington, and he's portraying himself as the third way in a way, even though he isn't. And I see so many parallels with the wave and how people react and how people get agonized and aggravated. So you read a lot about it, and we hope for the best in November that the administration is going to be replaced.
Yes, yes.
Because it also has a huge impact in Germany. It's also, I mean, it's the US are the world leader, the world exporter of democratic values. So we always look to the US, and you're a role model, and maybe a role model with a small pause.
not feeling the role modelness right now, or the bad role model, because there's good and bad role models, right? Ron, you know, right? You were stuck in the middle of that, weren't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
So vote, right, vote, correct, left, vote, right, vote, left, vote, middle people vote. So we have a bunch of questions in the chat room. So one question from Mark Hancock, actually, is, will this be on TV in a bigger way than the MarshStream, or how can we make it huge at the MarshStream to get this wonderful documentary out? Is there plans for this to go on the History Channel? What are the plans?
Yeah, there's definitely the possibility. I'm currently just delivering the documentary to my US colleague in New York, but I don't have a decision yet when they're airing it, or if it's aired on the History Channel or any other US network. But they have asked for the film, and it's in the process of being delivered. So I will inform you. It's the chances are very, very high that it's coming to US cable television.
Well, I must tell you, Emanuel, that it's an honor to have the film at the Marsh. The Marsh has 30-year legacy of bringing unspoken voices and needs to the public. So it's a lovely fit, actually. It's wonderful.
It's a perfect fit. Stephanie, thanks for making it happen.
Oh my goodness, thank you for letting us do this. And I think we had the largest YouTube viewership we've ever had so far. So people found out about, we had 1,600 hits on our ad about it.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of interest for what you've done. Okay. So Nikki asks, mind control was happening. Do you think it's similar to what is going on now with people who may have been kind previously, but are now vicious and violent due to Trump's permission for people to do horrible things without consequences?
You know, I almost see the opposite taking place. When I walk around my neighborhood, or I think about things and see what on the television nightly, I see our care workers giving up their lives. I see people taking care of each other, passing out food. I see Black Lives Matter on the streets. I see our young people particularly struggling for freedom. I'm social justice. I'm fairly excited about the positive things I see. Of course, I'm always positive, which is somewhat of a dilemma.
Good dilemma. Imagine if you were just negative. This wouldn't happen.
Well, I know how easily we give up our freedom for the thought of being racially superior to others.
Bill Klink, I think, it asks Ron, if this was an experiment with seniors, I don't think he means seniors in high school. I think he means seniors like
Us?
those people that are slightly older than us. Would it have been successful if it would have been with seniors? He says, for my part, my senior contemporaries would not have been accepting of it. We were not adults, but more sophisticated.
I think there might be some truth to that. Although I will say this, Philip Zimbardo at Stanford University did the prison experiment, and they would be like seniors plus, and those students fell victim to being either prisoners or guards almost immediately. So maybe we're all subject to this appeal of being different or being superior. I don't think it's necessarily an age thing.
Ron, you said you regret having done it. Do you feel any differently after hearing what your students have to say, those students that were part of the experiment have to say now?
Yeah, it was very dangerous and could have gone in a different direction quite easily. So I am asked repeatedly by particularly European producers to do this as a quote game show. And I constantly have to say, no, you do not want to humiliate young people. You do not want to travel this story further. It's no, no, no. Find ways to bring about, joy and life in your world, not this.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Okay. So are any of the footage in the film of Cubberley High from back then, or is this all, was the footage that you used, Emanuel, just representing what was going on back then?
No, the moving images were representing what was going on back then, but they're all from the late 60s. The photographs were the original photographs, and they were provided by Mark Hancock and Phil Needle.
Stephanie, the oddity was that the school still exists. It's sitting there like a ghost almost. It's not used as a school. It's used as a community recreation center. But the building and the rooms are all there. So Emanuel was able to go back into that very scenario, that very place where the story took place. And it was quite interesting for me to walk into those rooms 50 years after the fact and close the curtains or just feel the room. There are ghosts there.
I bet. Well, why did you banish the brightest students to the library, Ron?
Well, that was part of the experiment, was to take out those intellectuals right away, because you really want those in the middle that are normally ignored, are not in advanced placement, normally don't have a place or an honoring or a value, to give them value and see what would happen.
All right, well, this was wonderful. I want to remind everyone that you can still watch this through midnight tomorrow. Please tell anyone you think who might be interested in seeing it, if they want to see it now, before it gets its History Channel or whatever broadcast. You can see it at MarshStream through tomorrow night, midnight. Please consider making a tip to our tip jar, because we want to keep doing things like that, and you will keep us sustainable. And as I said, we are being matched right now. Can you have any, Emanuel, do you have any final things you'd like to say to your audience?
Yes. What's interesting is Ron Jones, he kind of published a manuscript a couple of years after the experiment, and he named the final chapter Strength Through Love. And I think this is the answer. Whatever we hear, whatever we read on the news, I don't think you can beat hatred with hatred. You can only beat hatred with love. And this is something I've learned from Ron. This is something I've learned from the students. And this is something we should always bear in mind when we talk with people who might have a different opinion than we do. It's important. Love trumps hate.
Are you
Cause
doing
a little trouble. Eyes on the prize.
so? Yeah, Emanuel. So is that your next documentary?
In a way, I'm telling the story of blacks in Germany, because we also have a large history, and there's also a big stain on the German history in regard to colonialism and the lives of Black people. So this is something I'm working currently right now.
So that's your next document. Does it have a name yet?
Not yet, no.
Somebody wants the link to the movie. I guess the link, you can do the link right now to the MarshStream. I'll ask Brian, our wonderful producer, if he can put that in, the direct link. And Ron, do you have any closing things you'd like to say to everybody?
You know, this is a question, Stephanie, and for Brian. I'd be happy to answer questions. I do this on a pretty daily basis with students from Israel or different places. So if someone watching the show tonight would like to ask me a question on email, I don't know how to do this, but I'd be happy to answer you. So my email address is rondeannajones@comcast.net. rondeannajones@comcast.net.
And give them marks.
And and also that www.thewavehome.com will give you, that'll allow you to see the plays that are happening worldwide. Really fascinating.
Yeah, before we leave, why don't you talk a little bit about what you've done to give everyone so much freedom to really take this story and make it their own?
Well, fortunately, I have the theater rights to this particular story, and that's only due to the graciousness of the Whole Earth Catalog. Stuart Brand sold me the rights for $1 when Norman Lear was trying to make it public domain. So I've always given theaters, particularly children's theater, the right to do this story. But email me and we'll talk about it. I'm communicating with several groups around the country right now about doing plays about this. And it's, our kids are talented. They've got all this technology and vitality. So hallelujah.
Well, before we leave, which I'm going to probably keep saying for the next whatever minutes, tell everybody about what we did with it, what you allowed us to do with it, and what happened at the Marsh.
Well, that's, Emanuel, you'll love this. The play we did at the Marsh was so unique because one, we had this huge talent of people, Cliff Mayette, David Denny, Kathy Peck. It was a musical. Fred, it was a musical. So I had a lot of poetry that I've never shown with people about the story that I'd written. We could translate that poetry into music. And it was by far the most enjoyable experience I've ever had. That musical is the strongest version of what really happened because of the music. There's a fire in the girls' bathroom, everybody running, screaming. It's got all the details. There is a moment in time. And it comes to everyone, this moment in time. It's not expected, something is wrong. Injustice right in front of you. What will you do this moment that is here today? Will you speak out loud or pray it away this moment? The choice you must make for silence and fear, or risk that will take you to freedom. Ah, the Marsh musical.
Marshy Theater. I don't know if there's any way to see it. Is there? Well, we'll check into it. We
Well,
must
should
have the
show
video.
that, Stephanie.
We have the video. Anyway, that was a wonderful experience. And this is wonderful. Ron,
Thank you.
setting this up, Emanuel, letting us do this and making this incredible, incredible video. And there's Deanna. Hello, Deanna.
I want to tell you, you can go back to bed now.
That's right. If you can
Oh,
sleep
love.
after this,
Thank you. Thanks, Emmanuel.
Thank you,
Well,
Dana.
thanks,
Great
Stephanie.
seeing you guys.
thank you all. Thank you all so much. This was incredible. We are so honored. I am. MarshStream's honored that you would let us do this. And a reminder, you can watch this until tomorrow at midnight. Tell your friends.
Cool.
Just go to the marsh.org, go to the performer spotlight, and you will see it on our website. You just click and you can watch it until midnight tomorrow. Give us a tip. It's matched. Join us at MarshStream every night at 7:30, where we have incredible shows from fun to the most serious things in the world, done incredibly well, giving a voice to our community. Have a wonderful weekend. Be healthy, in good spirits, and we want to hear your voice. Thank you all. Thank you all.